Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to try and go through this quite quickly. There's a lot to cover in the people strategy part of dealing with the corona economy. So welcome, everybody. I know it's a tough time for all of us. I hope you are managing in isolation. I hope you're realizing that you either do or don't like your partner, do or don't like your kids, do or don't like your house, do or don't like yourself even. And that's a very good lead into this particular webinar. The people issue in business at the moment is particularly tough because people are real things and we have real relationships with them. There are two parts to this webinar. The first is going to be human-centered. And I'm going to be talking mostly in this webinar about how we are all behaving so that we can understand ourselves as leaders, but importantly, how we can understand others before we negotiate, communicate, and engage with them. The second webinar, which will run on Thursday, will be all the technical aspects about how you manage your people resource in the business. The actual strategies for high, medium, low-risk businesses, the negotiating elements, the different options for negotiation, and any relief that's available through government, I'll be discussing on Thursday. For those of you who have attended my webinars, I always start with this image because all of us are in this position. There is nothing more startling and shocking than being punched in the face. And Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get hit in the mouth. And trust me, I've been hit in the mouth a couple of times. I do martial arts. It is a shock to the system. And what happens is physiologically, you take a gasp, you go like that. The moment you do that, you breathe into the top of your lungs, and that's called your sympathetic nervous system or the asympathetic nervous system. And it releases a whole lot of cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream, your vision narrows, and you move into a fight or flight position. When you get hit in the face, and you get hit hard in the face, which has happened to all of us in this new shock of the corona economy, there's one difference between hopefully you and everyone else, because this is what a winner looks like. Winners get up. When they're hit in the face, they fall to the ground, they get up. This fellow, Buster Douglas, took on Mike Tyson. He had a very mediocre boxing history and record. Mike Tyson was sitting with 47-0, I think it is, or 48-0. They climbed into the ring together. It was an intermediate fight for Mike Tyson as he was getting ready to fight Evander Holyfield. In the 8th round, Mike Tyson knocked him down. He fell to the tarmac. He fell to the floor. He got up. And in the 10th round, this no-name fellow, Buster Douglas, knocked out Mike Tyson. And you see, there were a couple of reasons for it. The first is he got up. But the second, and equally important, it was the longest fight that Mike Tyson had to endure, because up until that point, most of his fights were won in the 1st round, and the furthest round I think he had fought to was about the 5th round. He wasn't prepared for the marathon that lay ahead. There are a number of lessons in that for us. So the first part of managing people in the environment that we're in is to understand yourself. And for that, we're going to draw off a lady who did some of the most remarkable work in understanding grief. She basically committed her life as a Swiss-German counselor to looking after people who had lost loved ones. And she was interested in understanding how to work with people who had lost someone close to them. So she mapped out, using science, the grief cycle. And initially, when someone loses someone close to them, they go through a period of denial, saying, is this possible? You go through frustration as you realize that the person you care for is going to not come through this. That frustration can be seen as anger. It can be seen as a complete disruption of the life that you've always had. It takes you into a stage of depression. If you are fortunate enough to be surrounded by the right types of people and support, you move into a space of experimentation, decision, integration. Integration is where you find a new normal and hopefully through that new meaning. It's really important to understand this because as business owners, the threats posed to our businesses are akin to losing something close to us, something meaningful to us, something that we are deeply, profoundly reliant on for our income and livelihoods. The pressures that we are facing as business owners are equally profound. We have a number of people looking to us to lead the business through this really difficult period, and hopefully with everybody still on board. It's worthwhile spending just a little bit of time on this, because if you look at the reaction to the denial piece, when you realize that perhaps your business is in threat, you go through a period of shock and denial. Most of us are thinking, undoubtedly, that at the end of 3 weeks, well, will things be back to normal? It's my view that nothing will ever be normal again, because the vaccines that are being spoken about are possibly 18 months away. And during the period between now and then, what does the future look like? Is it extended lockdowns? Is it ongoing social isolation? Is it periods of lockdowns? Nobody knows, and it's really hard to forecast. For those of us who listened to the president's address last night, if you listen carefully between the words, there's a suggestion that perhaps this might endure longer than any of us want to or can anticipate. So we need to prepare for that. The anger and the fear is driven by, as I said, you are smacked in the face, you fall to the mat, you take a sharp breath, and you narrow your vision and you narrow your hearing. You go into a kind of tunnel vision, and it's a fight or flight response. And fight or flight responses, when you are driven by fear and anger, are wholly ineffective. When you realize that there's little you can do about the environment, you sit in depression, and that depression should hopefully last you 3 days, a day, 3 hours. It depends very much on your character. It depends extensively on who you have surrounding you, who you are talking to. It's interesting, a lot of business partners have spouses, for example, or partners for that matter. Can you discuss it with your partner? If so, what can you discuss? Because if the family's livelihood is dependent on this business, the pressures it creates in that environment become quite severe and intense. If you don't navigate it effectively, you won't move into a place of experimentation. And I want to talk a little bit about experimentation, because experimentation is no different to innovation. And innovation is mostly led by necessity, not opportunity. A lot of us will find ourselves in our businesses now, out of sheer necessity, having to figure out a different way of doing things. It is the single greatest gift that we can extract from this very difficult environment we're in at the moment. The way to see what's working and what's not is to follow the path of what is working through action, not through thought, not through deep contemplation, not through modeling on Excel, not through writing up business plans, but going out there and through screens and other manners of engagement, talking to the people who count, because the answers to the future of your business lie in 3 areas. It lies with your customers and clients. Trust me, they're going through equal angst and their environments are changing. It lies with your team. They know where the opportunities are to improve on the business. They know what gaps have been missed before and that could be filled now. And they are thinking deeply and profoundly about their own futures in the business itself. So never before would you have a team more in support of finding a new direction for the business to survive and thrive. And you will find it in your suppliers. Your suppliers see you as their source of revenue. You are their customer. And reaching out to them and getting different perspectives is the way to go about doing this. When you do a turnaround in any business environment, your 3 answers to turnaround are with customers, team, and suppliers. All of them have a view. And it's your job to extract that view and see what parts of the recipe fit for your circumstances and your intention in the business to get to the other side of the lockdown, and more importantly, to thrive thereafter. So the experimentation would lead to decision. Decision leads to a new normal, And trust me, through that, you will find your meaning again in the business itself. So how do we move through that curve very quickly? The best way to do it, and I'm going to give you 3 tool sets. And the reason these tool sets are important is because first and foremost, you have to manage yourself. If you manage yourself and gain clarity, certainty, and confidence in your behavior and actions, it's going to be very hard for you to lead, and through that will be very hard for you to negotiate with your team. And incidentally, let me just clarify what I mean by the word confidence. Confidence is being calm at the moment you know you're about to fail in the endeavor you're undertaking. It's being calm in the moment you see that fist coming towards your face, knowing you're going to get smacked in the face, because you know that you will simply stand up and continue to fight. It's not about panicking. So the 3 tool sets I'm going to give you are useful for you to maintain the experimentation mindset and not migrate back up into denial, frustration, anger, or depression, because we will see ourselves traversing up and down that curve a number of times over the next year. The first is work with truths. Truths, absolute black and white facts, and there are very few of them. You are born, absolute truth. You will die, absolute truth. You can never change another person, absolute truth. If you think that you can change another person and you use methods of persuasion, negotiation, bribery, fear, anger, pity, whatever emotions you might bring to bear to change another person, will simply take you back into a place of frustration, and the frustration leads into depression before it leads into inspired action again. So adopt this as a truth. Only another person can change themselves. We've always lived in a world of uncertainty. Think back to everything you've done in your business, and please tell me it's been an easy ride. Maybe for 1 or 2 or 3%. But I've worked with over 3,000 business owners in the last 25 years. I'm yet to find one that's had an easy ride. Every single business owner I have worked with has got a war story or 20 behind them. See it as that. There's a wonderful expression in the marine sailing, boating world. It says, a true, skillful sailor is only ever built when there are doldrums or when there are storms. A doldrum is a period where there is no wind and you're stuck out at sea with no ability to move in any direction at all. And that can last for 3, 4, 5 days before the winds pick up. A storm, I don't need to tell you what that is about, because storms sink ships. The true sailor builds their skill in those 2 environments. Adopting a view that I have always worked in uncertainty and I will continue to work in uncertainty is the early stage of snapping you out of depression into inspired action. The is sacred. This was said by Carl Jung, a psychologist. And he says, it's not what could be, what should be, what might be, what ought to be. It's not about a fair world or an unfair world. It's not about luck or no luck. What is. And right now, what is that it is unlikely that at the end of the 3-week lockdown, we will simply return back to normal. And that's where a lot of your thinking ought to be when you're starting to negotiate with your people. And finally, I wish I could compel you and convince you to adopt this with 100% blind faith, where you just simply choose from this webinar to believe that this is an absolute truth. The only thing you have 100% control over is your attitude. It's a choice to remain in depression. It's a choice to remain angry. It's a choice to be frustrated. It's a choice to act and experiment to find a new way forward for your business. The only person who can control that is yourself, because remember, you cannot change another person, which means no one can change you. This is a decision you have to take. And here's the thing about adopting this positive attitude, an attitude that looks for inspired action to find a new truth for your business. The attitude leads to your behavior. The behavior gives you the result. If the result is good for the business, then you've got the right attitude. If the result is not working, to simply persist with that behavior, in other words, to hold on to an attitude that doesn't give you positive behavior that works for the business, is equally a choice. To change your behavior, you need to change your attitude. And I'm hoping that through this process of this webinar, we will get to the right attitude, because there is only one for a business owner. The next thing is I want to share another tool with you. And I studied this about 25 years ago. The Upanishads are ancient Indian texts. They date back 3,500, 4,000 years. And they look at what is referred to as the Gunas, 3 states of energy that all of us are constantly in. Here's a diagram of it. You've got sattva. Sattva is a space of centered, balanced, calm, rational contentedness. It's not about being happy or about being sad. It's not about being depressed or about being angry. It's about being centered and contented. Sattva is the place where you make the best calls in your life, the best decisions in your life. Rajas is about high energy, high excitement. And for a lot of us in business, the addiction to being busy, the addiction to accelerating our growth, accelerating our businesses, holding everything together, the excitement, the danger, the anticipation of all of that is what Rajasic energy is all about. And when I found this diagram, I was so excited because I saw the word workaholic there. I am one. I'm addicted to my work. I believe in what we do. I love what we do. I get my meaning in what we do as a business. I believe we are making the world a better place because we invest in the single most important people in society, which is that private business owner. And when I looked at this, and I realized that we were going to go into lockdown already a month ago, man, did I come slamming down with anger into a depressive state. It lasted me about an hour because all the plans that we had laid out for this year were going to have to change. And all the momentum we had built last year to really grab this year and make a significant difference in our impact, we're going to have to change. Staying in this space is a very difficult place to be in this environment. So Rajas is the second guna, the second energy. The third is tamas. And tamas talks to being passive. Tamas is, it's important, you need it before you sleep at night. So you need that low energy. But oddly, tamas really attaches itself to mental dullness, laziness, ignorance, where I choose to, for example, only believe people who think like me, where I choose to maintain only my perspective, where I choose to point fingers and blame. It's where you take no accountability and responsibility for the circumstances you happen to find yourself in, even if you are there out of sheer bad luck. People who remain in a Thomistic state do not migrate out of the depressive state of the Kubler-Ross curve. So if I look at the three very quickly, what takes you into tamas? Surfing, social media. How many of us are now relying on our screens and internet connectivity in order to try and work effectively and be productive? We go onto Google, we end up going down a rabbit hole. We look at social media, we see what others are thinking, we attempt to engage. All of that, purposeless efforts, take you into a very deep, dark place because time whiles by, and at the end of the hour, 2 hours, the day, the week, the 3-week lockdown, you reflect back and say, what did I actually positively achieve for my business? Too much sleep, too much eating. All of those attach you into an energy state of tamas. Sattva, it's about putting a proper routine in play, about having a plan of action, how you are going to capitalize on these 3 weeks to reshape, rebuild, and get ready to get to the other side of the corona economy geared for growth. Because the last businesses standing at the end of the 3 weeks, at the end of the 3 months, at the end of the 6 months that we're about to endure will be the true winners that see spectacular growth. It's about uncluttering your mind and being very target driven around the actions that you put in place. Rajas happens when you act before you understand. A lot of us as business owners are sitting, wondering, contemplating, where are our people? What are they doing right now? How are they helping me? What are the big banks doing? What is SARS doing? What is government doing? And looking at seeing what governments are doing in China, America, Timbuktu, or India is completely futile and irrelevant. It doesn't help you in the moment take the right actions that you need to support your business. We're working in home environments. Do you have a PC game on the side? How many of you are playing Candy Crush? Are you snapping at your kids, your dogs, the cats, the birds, everything around you because of the frustration you have not having control over the circumstances that have led to where we are today, and the mere fact that we carry the salaries of all our staff? Where are they? What are they actually doing? Can you feel that energy? It becomes angry and negative. And if you remember where that frustrated, angry energy was, it was just before the depressive state again. It's really important that you manage yourself through these gunas to understand where you sit between rajas and tamas. I'll give you a clue. To move out of a tamistic state, you need to embark in action. You need a ragistic energy, enough to get you centered into sattva. The Upanishads are over 3,500 years old. They are super insightful and smart. And it's a great tool for you to use to manage yourself. It's equally a great tool for you to use to understand people that you are managing and negotiating with. The last thing I want to share with you as a tool comes from the Kabbalah, which is an ancient Jewish mystical text. You know, it's interesting. There was wisdom that preceded all of our lives, and that wisdom dates back 6,000-7,000 years, and it's available to us all. And it's in times like this where there's a lot of value in grasping it, understanding the basic principles, and using it to take control of your own attitude and therefore behavior. The Kabbalah said that the apex leaf, that's the apex of a leaf, is where a plant or a tree grows. The tip leaf, the apex leaf, stretches into the empty space to reach the sunlight. And the Kabbalah argued, when observing the tree of life, indicated in this picture here, that the crown, the top of your head, is where we grow. We grow into the future. They said that your energy must come from the future. So for us as business people, it means that if we have clarity of purpose around where we are going, but more importantly, what we want to build, which means it lies in the future, the clearer that is, the more meaning we can place on it, the more purposeful we can be towards ensuring that we are building that thing in the future the way we desire it and want it to be. We will draw our energy from that and not the negativity of the present moment and not the thoughts of secondhand wasted pasts. So 3 tool sets: absolute truths, the Upanishads where you measure your 3 energies, and the Kabbalah that gets you future forward focused. So what should that future be? We, from an auric point of view, I only believe that you're sailing to one destination, irrespective of the weather, irrespective of the seas that you're sailing in, because right now they're choppy. And that is to build your business into an asset of value. It has got 3 characteristics to it. The first is, if you think about what an asset is, so let's take a share on the stock exchange, for example. that is an asset that we might invest into. We buy it for 50 Rand today, and hopefully 5 years from now, we can sell it for a capital value of 500 Rand if we've made smart investments. So an asset of value by way of your business means that your business has a valuation today, and your intention is that the valuation 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now will be significantly greater by way of capital gain on the value in that future. So you want to grow the capital value of your business. The 50 Rand business today must be worth 500 Rand 10 years from now. The next thing that an asset has, it has income value and growth. When you buy that share on the stock exchange, you expect and you hope to receive dividends. And dividends are paid either 6 monthly or annually. But it's income that comes to you. Ideally, you want to see those dividends grow. So in our businesses, if we build our businesses correctly, we should grow the capital value, and we should be able to extract dividends over a period of time leading up to that eventual sale. And then the third feature of an asset of value is that it is tradable. 10 years from now, when I sell that share that I bought for 50 Rand for 500 Rand, when I sell it, I can trade it. And when I trade it, it means I don't go with it. The business, independently of me, can be sold to offer an investor a business for 500 Rand that they expect to grow its capital value, and they expect to receive dividends by way of income until they choose to sell it for 5,000 Rand 10 years from now. We need to all get our minds around our businesses with that perspective, because that long-term play will help you determine your short-term battle plan for the business itself and how effectively to work with your people. So let's talk about building the business battle plan. The first thing we've got to do is take a view on the Corona economy. And I'm not about bearing good news or bad news. I'm attempting to center myself around the rhythm of understanding what the Corona economy is going to do. I read very widely, and I read and follow scientific thought on the Corona economy. And most indications are that this is going to be with us for 18 months. The reason being, until there's a vaccine that's globally available, Corona will continue to exist. In 18 months, Corona will be wiped out in the same way that polio has been wiped out through the vaccines we get as kids. Between now and then, the way that all economies will operate is going to be deeply and profoundly uncertain. So if we accept that that is the case, and if we recall that we have always built our businesses in uncertainty, and if we take control of our mindsets, and we are going to make calls that are going to be very short term with a view to lift your head, reassess, change direction, act, and then stop, reassess, and repeat that cycle continuously, we can be calm about the fact that we're in for 18 very uncertain months. The next thing is you must do a resource check in your business. Right now, there are 3 types of businesses. Those that are at very high risk, for example, anything in the social economy, restaurants, hotels, casinos, event management businesses, entertainment businesses are at extremely high risk. There are medium risk businesses, and then there are very low risk businesses. You need to assess how the Corona economy, with ongoing social distancing as a frame to look at your business with, places your business in a high, medium, and low risk scenario. At the same time, you need to run your numbers and see what resources you have available. And by that, I mean, if you had followed the original webinar, which will be made available to everyone incidentally, on how you build a battle plan, it's how you get money in fast and how you hold on to the money. What we are all looking for is a shock absorber, so that when we take off and land, we're landing with some sort of between where we are today and where we were before we took off. The next thing is, what is your strategy to survive the lockdown? We've got to get to the end of the 3-week period. and I'll talk to that strategy for high, medium, low risk businesses. But specifically, if you don't have a battle plan to survive the lockdown, then anything to grow after the lockdown will be futile. You need a battle plan that looks at all three of these areas. A view on the corona economy. Within that context, how do you survive the lockdown and how will you grow in the lockdown? And the reason this is important as the early stage of your people strategy is because you will see there are certain skill sets that you need in your business to survive the lockdown, and then there are different skill sets that you will need to grow after the lockdown. So get your head right about your business before you begin negotiating with your staff and your team. If you recall, the Rajas Guna in the Upanishads that I spoke about earlier was about high energy that takes you into a place of frustration. It's where you act with your team before you yourself have gotten yourself under control and you have a battle plan for your business. So setting up your people strategy, you don't just simply leap into it. Take some thought and consideration. And there are three aspects to this. In the first case, what you need to do is list your team into three stages of focus. Critical to survive, who do I need? And think deeply and think carefully about it. Important to thrive, who would I need? Are there different people? Are there different skills? And thereafter, good to sustain my business and grow. Who's in that third tier? When you create these three stages, what you're going to do is take all the people in your organization and place them into these three stages. Those that are critical for survival, those that are important for you to thrive, and then those that are good to sustain and grow the business as we enter over time a new normal. Once you've done that, you need to set up comms with your team. And I'm hoping many of you have done that, because to be in lockdown and not able to communicate with your team places you in a position where you won't be able to deploy a people strategy. Use Zoom, use Skype. And when people say, oh, I'm not techie focused, well, that's already telling you who's going to be important to the future of your business. Because if we're rolling into an 18-month period of uncertainty with extensive social isolation in periods and buckets of time, people who opt to, through their attitude, hold a view that they are not tech-orientated are going to be the people that suffer and will be the people that drag you down. I'll share an example with you. I invested in a business in Greece, a honey business. The honey in Greece is gathered and garnered by subsistence farmers whose average age is 64 years of age. It's peasant farmers right throughout Greece. They are the most impossible people to work with. They know everything and they think they know everything. They're not prepared to work in teams. They're not prepared to be led. They're not prepared to work together either. And yet, the technology we deployed for them to effectively farm their honey relied on engagement through a cell phone, a typical old-fashioned Nokia cell phone. Over 2,800 farmers adopted that cell phone technology. Why? Because they understood through the data we gave them, they could improve the quality of their honey, improve the veracity of the harvest itself, and therefore earn more income from the same effort of harvesting and farming honey. When people are given a good reason to adopt technology, trust me, watch how quickly they will adopt technology. In South Africa, we saw that in many cases, folks living in the city would send money transfers to their grandparents living in the rural areas. And how did it all occur? It occurred through a phone. And how quickly did that gogo learn how to use that phone? It was in a flash like that, so she could get money to buy food and supplies for the month that lay ahead from her grandchildren or kids working in the city. Choosing to say, I'm not a tech kind of person, is a choice. And for that choice, there will be consequences. And for those consequences, only you are responsible. So you need to talk to your teams. Get onto Zoom, as most of you already are, and get your teams familiar with it. There are thousands of videos on YouTube on how to use Zoom, how to use Skype, how to get good at it, how to remain bad at it. It's all a choice. Set up WhatsApp groups in your teams. A company WhatsApp group, a WhatsApp group for administration and management, a WhatsApp group for operations, a WhatsApp group for sales and business development. Organize your teams into properly structured WhatsApp groups and regulations around it. It's not for sending cat videos. This is for teams to work together and to work together effectively. Email, for those of your teams who have got access to email, use it to coordinate the setting up of Zoom, Skypes, and WhatsApp groups. And then you need to understand your channels. Because we're under pressure and because we are under attack, and incidentally, let me just say immediately, the reason I use battle language is because the lives that we are living right now in South Africa in the lockdown period would be the exact same lives we would live if we were in a world war and we were under attack. Excepting the bullets now are invisible. But the circumstances where only essential services can operate remain exactly as it would in a war situation. It doesn't mean, however, that you can't ignore proper channels. And by that, if you have a big labor force, you have to go and abide by the channels of communication. You have a bargaining council, you've got floor stewards and shop stewards that have communication with you, that have the ability to communicate and reach right across your workforce. Understand the communications that you're going to deploy and understand the channels that you're going to use to communicate, because all of this needs to be designed and done for the isolation, social distancing environment we find ourselves in. So once you've understood where to place your people, once you've understood how to set up communications, you're now going to figure out your process. I'm going to say it again. The Labor Relations Act remains in play. This is not an opportunity for you to performance manage poor performers. The last thing you want as a business owner is to find yourself in a situation where you are facing a constructive dismissal claim against yourself. So do this properly. Firstly, because the law requires you to. The second reason is the second reason is because that's what leaders do. I'm going to make this point a couple of times. The way you do things is how you will be measured. It's less about what you say. It's less about what you feel. It's less about what you think. The actions you take and the manner you take those actions in is how you will be judged and how you will be evaluated. It's really crucial that if you have to cut back hard on your people resource, you do so in a manner that is well led and respected. Not liked, respected. And the reason for it is, when we get to the other side of the crisis that we might be facing in our business, we need those teams back. Because if you don't have people in your business when you get to the other side of the corona economy, who's going to start the engines of the business again for you? There are a number of concessions that are being made at the moment around how we engage with people that were recently written into bill, and I'll be discussing those on Thursday's webinar, which is the technical aspects of working with people. The next thing is earn your leadership rights. It's a good image, this. That fellow really trusts that fellow over there. You need to earn the trust of your team. And what that means is this: negotiate your people last. Do it for a number of reasons. They are, without a doubt, the most important resource you have to keep your business growing and to grow your business after we get out of the lockdown period. They are the most important assets we have in the country. If we compound unemployment unnecessarily or thoughtlessly, we are harming ourselves. The downgrading that we already are facing is going to create some consternation in the economy. But let's not contribute to the unemployment rate without very careful consideration. And let me be clear on this. Your strategy is for the business to survive first and foremost. So I'm not saying you employ people in order to function and that's what you do. What you're doing is there to survive the business first, but you negotiate your people last. Landlords, we've spoken about them. We did a webinar on it. Please visit the resources we have for the webinar. There are letters over there that you can use to negotiate with your landlord, and you can use those letters freely. We've spoken about banks very briefly, but a lot of the banks have come forward with concessions. ABSA came late to the party, very late to the party, reactively to the party. Under social pressure, they came to the party, but they've come to the party. They came to the party yesterday, and they've come with a very ordinary form of relief, which is a capital moratorium on any debts that you might owe. I expect that the banks are going to increase their leniencies and are going to come to the party in a more significant way later on in this month or next month. SARS, we spoke about how to negotiate with SARS. There's a webinar on it, there's a letter there, you're welcome to use it. Please use it. The opportunity to negotiate your people's strategy by negotiating deferred payments on PAYE, for example, to keep the cash buffer in the business whilst employing people and not letting them go. I spoke about that in detail, and SARS will negotiate with you around that if you use the right approach and you're adequately well prepared. The telcos, some of you have got very big telco bills, negotiate with them too. Go to your customers, sell hard, sell up, sell now for 3-4 months ahead, and find new customers, because many people who are attempting simply to sell into their customers without a proposition that is relevant to the reality that their customers find themselves in, make those customers vulnerable to those companies and open to you. When you negotiate with your people and you can demonstrate that you've addressed the landlords, the banks, SARS, telcos, and customers, and they can see that you're negotiating with them as a last resort for the primary objective, which is survivability of the business, you will earn their respect, but more importantly, you will demonstrate that you have followed the process of the law to the T, in fact, way over and beyond. In getting yourself ready for negotiation, you're going to use head and heart, because all of us are facing very, very difficult circumstances. It's important that you let your feelings be seen. It's important that you recognize in the staff that you negotiate with that their circumstances are equally tough. I mean, can you imagine how people must be feeling that are vulnerable and employed? They're sitting in a situation cooped up in a home, if they're lucky to have a home, where they have food stockpiled, if they're lucky to have food stockpiled, and aren't in a situation where they need to shop daily or twice a day or every second day, whatever the case might be. They're sitting with maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 people in that home. There might only be 3 or 4 rooms as opposed to 6 or 7 rooms. So the pressures that everybody's feeling in their personal lives are intense. And if you don't recognize that and demonstrate that you recognize that through empathy, by making yourself exposed to the feelings you're feeling and experiencing, then you will not gain the respect of that individual. They will not hear or see anything that you attempt to talk and show them. If people feel that you're negotiating with them with empathy because you recognize their lived experience, you already have an ally in the sense that they will hear what you have to say and see how you are behaving. And with those 2 elements in play, your ability to negotiate is dramatically improved. You must use a rational argument. Using feelings and being emotional are 2 different things. You use feelings to connect on a human level, but the rational argument has to be crystal clear around your battle plan and why this is the decision you are taking. If you have not got a battle plan in place and you don't know what it looks like, how would you negotiate with me as a staff member saying that I might have to be let go or move to a 3-day work week? For me to buy into that and to support it and to back you, it's important that I understand, firstly, you've understood me and my circumstances, and that the battle plan you've communicated to me makes simple, logical sense for the business. Next, it's leadership time. And this is where you need to be honest. Don't be tricky-dicky. Don't try and take advantage. A number of people have simply said to their teams, okay, this is your compulsory leave. That's it. Plus, because it's 3 weeks, not 2 weeks, 5 days will be unpaid leave. If that whole process has endured without discussion and without consultation, it is illegal in terms of the Labor Relations Act. To the extent that you connect with your team, to the extent that you have a battle plan that's simple and clear, and that you have a timeline to it, and that people can adopt and understand it, puts you in a position of leadership, which means that they will respect the tough decisions that you've had to take. And when we get to the other side of this, you would be able to call on them to come back on board and support the growth of the business. Be creative. The one thing I've learned is that your team knows a lot more than you ever thought they knew. As I mentioned, in a number of the turnarounds that I've been involved in, I know now that when I do a turnaround, the first place I go to are the teams on the ground. I speak to the front end of the business, people in business development and sales and marketing. I look and seek and consult for their ideas, because all of them understand the dire situation that we face ourselves in. I go to the operational areas and I look to and seek to understand how we can improve capabilities and efficiencies there. I go to administration and management and I look for ideas and strategies on how we can reduce operating overheads and costs. It's really important that you get creative through the engagements that you have with your teams. Because here's the thing, if you let people go, and you let people go because you thought they had no value to add, who's lost out here? Both of you have. If you have the consultation, and through the consultation you can see there are no other options, then the tough call has to be made and the bitter medicine has to be swallowed by your team members. But don't shoot yourself in the foot by thinking that I won't consult with my team because I don't want to face the tough calls that I need to make in an open, confrontational way. It'll only be confrontational if you're not centered, going back to the Gunas and taking control of yourself, if you have not demonstrated an empathy for people, and if you don't have a proper battle plan to communicate. Be objective driven. Your primary objective is to get to the other side with the business intact. It might be in a diminished state, but intact sufficiently for you to rebuild and grow. Remember, you'll be measured by your behavior, not your words. This is your objective. You need to be on the other side of the corona economy. You need to be a last man standing. At the same time, if you get there and you succeed with that, you need to gear your business for growth because many of your competitors won't be around. In both these instances, you need your teams and you need the right people. At the next webinar, because I'm cognizant of time, I'm going to discuss all the technical aspects that are involved. People strategies for high risk, medium risk, and low risk businesses. We'll talk about productivity, how you manage people through a screen, how you manage people from a distance. We'll talk about 3 working functional parts to your business, and I'll give you some ideas on how you can put people in the front end, in the middle, and in the back end of the business to productive use and work for not only surviving the 3-week shutdown, but most importantly, locking and loading the business for growth after the 3-week shutdown. I'll talk about institutional memory and systems, how you take the high-risk people in your business, the people that hold very significant keys to the operating capabilities of your business, and how you build that into systems, which makes the business a lot more robust. We'll talk about the deal structures, how you negotiate short weeks and what they are, half-time, how it works, retrenchment, how it works, how you redeploy people and how you reduce salaries in a consensually driven environment. We'll talk about the processes of negotiation, what you have to do, what you ought to do, and what you should do as a leader. And then finally, I'll have a lot of detail about government relief and tax relief to ease the very, very tough circumstances that you will face as a business owner, but equally that your staff who remain on board will face, and sadly for those who might not remain on board, what options are available for them. There will be very few. In ending off, we've created this resource at auric.com. If you simply go there, it'll pop up and says Corona Battles Plans or Corona Battle Strategies. The recording of this webinar will be there, so you will have all the content in this webinar that you are able to freely watch and dispense and disperse to others. There are other webinars there, the Business Battle Plan, how to negotiate with SARS. I look for answers to specific questions that you've asked before. Your opportunity to put questions to us will be when we send you the webinar, this particular recorded webinar. Please respond to what we send you. Tell me what you need to know about. Tell me the challenges you're facing, and we will create very specific webinars to deal with those specific challenges. Further topics that you want covered. And I would encourage you that during this period of time, because that's what you do have, to take the opportunity to read Sweat Scale Sell. It was a book that I wrote very specifically on how you build a business into an asset. And it has 11 stories of people no different to you and me, all South Africans, all true real life stories of people who built their businesses in some of the toughest periods one can possibly imagine. All of them, literally all of them, were told consistently that they would fail in building the businesses that they had built. And I talk about the early stages of their journey, the tactics they deployed, how they managed their clients, how they positioned their businesses, how they worked with their teams and their people, and how they built their businesses into assets which have capital growth, which have income growth, and can be sold without them. Because at the end of the day, with all the reinvestment we as business owners will have to make into our businesses to survive the Corona economy, we expect to return that investment back to us through the successful sale and exit of the business. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's been useful. I have gone over time. I tend to do that. I'm terribly sorry. I really wanted to get the human-centered engagement across to you in preparation for Thursday's webinar, which will be around managing your teams on a technical, strategic, tactical level. In that, we will have the deal structures and the negotiation tactics that sadly, all of you will have to deploy. So with that, please get access to Sweat Scale Sell. As of tomorrow, it's available on Audible, where the entire story is read out, but currently it's available on Kindle. I thank you for joining me, and I hope you got good value from this. Please get control of yourself, get control of your business, and I hope to have future webinars with you on the other side of the Corona economy too, where we can talk about accelerated growth as opposed to merely surviving the really tough 3 weeks we have ahead of us. With that, stay safe, stay well, and thank you for joining me.